My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me now and we will explore these topics and so much more with fascinating guests, authors, and experts who will guide us to Destination Unlimited. Have you ever had a calling? Imagine having a successful career and then leaving it because of a calling from spirit. Would you take the leap of faith and follow that calling? My guest this week on Destination Unlimited, transformational psychic medium Marla Freese, did just that. Marla was a small-town girl who spent 25 years as a successful TV and stage actress, only to leave it behind when Spirit called and she trusted, never looking back. Since devoting herself to this calling, she's appeared as a psychic medium on A&E, Bravo, History Channel, SyFy, TV Land, and Gaia TV's Beyond Belief with George Noory. Radio audiences have heard Marla on George Noory's Coast to Coast, Lisa Garr's Aware Show, and dozens of podcasts. Marla is a co-host of Dreamland on UnknownCountry.com, and most recently she appears on YouTube teleconferences with physicist and author Tom Campbell, blending physics and metaphysics to understand the science of how Marla works, making the paranormal normal. She appears in cities and towns across the country, presenting messages with Marla to small and large groups, educating people about their own intuition, connecting them with deceased loved ones, and potentially providing information about any aspect of their lives for their greatest good. Her website is marlafreese.com, and she joins us this week to discuss her just published book, American Psychic, a spiritual journey from the heartland to Hollywood, heaven, and beyond. Please welcome to Destination Unlimited, Marla Freese. Good evening, Marla.
Oh, Victor, thank you so much. What a lovely introduction, and I'm so happy to be with The Voice.
Well, thank you for joining me tonight. And we're going to find out more about your voice, which is a lovely voice also. It's a very healing and soothing and wonderful voice, so thank you.
Thank you.
Now, when we welcome a guest to Destination Unlimited for the first time, we ask them to share their early life and how their formative years contributed to their eventual paths. Please share about yours.
Well, you know, Victor, the book really does... it tracks the trajectory of the trauma of my childhood through the drama of my acting career into the transformation of my life. And I was raised in a beautiful town in the middle of South Central Pennsylvania, and I had incredible experiences as a child in the woods, but there were secrets and there were things that happened in my home and in my family, and I had to navigate those.
Now, were you aware of any of your abilities when you were young?
Well, I did have flashes. There were opportunities at the age of 8, 10, but at 14, I was basically saved by a voice, quote, that basically saved me from possibly even dying in a terrible horse accident.
Did you have anyone in your family before you who demonstrated any psychic abilities?
Well, you know, I heard about this. I heard about my grandmother, but I never met any of my grandparents. But apparently, one of the I think down in North Carolina, there was some talk about my great-grandmother who happened to be mulatto. She might have been Cherokee as well as Negro at that time, African-American. So there was some talk about her, but I didn't hear anything else about anyone.
All right. And what did your parents say when you started telling them about what you were experiencing?
Well, I didn't tell them at first. I had an incident across the street with a woman who was my mother's friend, where I basically saw that her boyfriend didn't want to spend time with her at Christmas and get her a gift, and that he was actually having an affair with a nurse at the hospital. And as soon as I told my mother's friend that, she actually called my mother, and further sight was discontinued.
So in other words, you were discouraged from having these experiences.
Well, yes, I was.
When you meet people today who have children who are gifted or open, what do you say to them?
Well, I think it's really wonderful, and I think it's really important not to discourage it, to be curious about it, because I was a huge skeptic. Some of these psychic things started happening for me as a child, Victor, but it wasn't until the mid-'90s that I really had been godsmacked.
Godsmacked meaning?
Well, I think that's when my whole awareness broke open, and I ended up this psychic ability, talking to the dead, all these things, this especially talking to the dead, I didn't believe in.
I see. I know when I was a kid and I had experiences and was open to information, I was told that I had an overactive imagination. And when my daughter was born and started demonstrating these, I always encouraged her to come out. Do you say that to those parents? Do you encourage them to keep developing, letting their children develop their abilities?
Well, I think that developing abilities are odd for parents, because if you don't have any context around this, you don't know what's happening to your child. And, when this was happening to me in the mid-'90s and I was an adult, I had to seek help. So I sought the help of clergy and therapists, and it was the U.S. military psychic spies that gave me context around this and started helping me. And that was incredible. But for children, well, I think you need to seek professionals and find out exactly what's going on so that you get the best kind of guidance for the children.
Now, you mentioned in American Psychic that as a child you needed to touch food before you could eat it, or touch people before you could trust them. What was that like?
Well, it made for, kind of a messy dinner, I know that. But I also learned when I got older and I found that the sensitivities in your hands were important. That was psychometry. Psychometry is the ability to sense frequency in anything, actually. Metal imbues information. So sometimes when people give you a ring, you could actually feel the resonance of the person by holding that ring. And as a child, I just started doing that for some reason.
What did it feel like to you?
Well, Victor, I suffered trauma with my mother. So I had to learn how to trust other people. And part of that might have been just touching them to see what their frequency felt like and how they were resonating as a person. I learned resonance at a young age, and I could feel things that were uncomfortable.
So you would sense that, in other words, if you touched a person's hand, for example, you could sense that whether you could trust them by comfortability, that it felt okay?
Well, it's a resonance. I also mentioned in the book, talking about a couple of the housekeepers that my mother had. I had strange connection to my mother as a child. So I was lucky to have my sister for the first 5 years of my life. And then, of course, the housekeepers that came in, and their resonance was so different and so loving and so calming, and that was really helpful to me. And I learned to associate different frequencies by different people.
So you actually saw these, sensed them, in retrospect, you're sensing them as frequencies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they had resonance.
Okay. Resonance meaning it resonates with you. It feels right to you. Is that?
Well, yes. I mean, possibly you as a child understood when certain relatives came in the house, you felt good about them or not.
Right.
Yeah, I think that we as children are able to access that information. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, just access that information. It comes from, sometimes it is touch, the sensorial aspect of that, and sometimes it's just being in a room with someone that has a certain frequency. You can feel anger, you can feel upset. You navigate those things that are going on in your own home, and I certainly had to do that.
Now, you shared, of course, in your book about those experiences that the readers will learn about with your mother. You also say that traumatic experiences as children often lead to gifts later in life. How so?
Well, I found out later in life that my hypersensitivity was starting to encroach on my life. I mean, I had left my hometown. I went to college. I had numerous experiences, of course. But when I was alone and living in Chicago, I started to have internal anxiety, and I didn't understand it. And I had to get a handle on that anxiety. And I believe it's my experience that the trauma that I suffered as a child heightened my sensibilities.
Explain that a little further. Just give a little more understanding to that.
Well, let's see. I think that there are neurons that come from fear, that also come from the body reacting to being hit or being scolded or being bullied in any way. And our body reacts to that. The fight or flight resonance inside of our body becomes more acute. And possibly my neurons made it easier on certain pathways to access information.
Okay, I understand that. That sense of feeling that we get when you talk about the resonance, that we're talking about the internal action of the connection between the synapses in our brain and the chemicals that flow between the different nerve cells, and how we interpret those chemicals being either something that's positive or pleasant or negative or dangerous.
Right. And Bruce Lipton talks a lot about that, and how the cells, they are receptors in themselves, right? The cells in themselves. And I think that happens to a lot of us. And the trajectory of this, Victor, is that if you don't learn how to handle it, you end up medicating it.
So many people today are addicted and have problems with opioids because they're trying to suppress the feelings that the traumatic experiences they've had in their lives are affecting them.
Yes, that's exactly right. It is. It's incredibly traumatic. And my goodness, so many of the people that are possibly doing that have heightened sensitivities and awarenesses and all different things about their own psychic intuitions and empathic qualities. I mean, all of it is psychic functioning for me, but the ability to see, hear, and feel and heightened awarenesses is being, it's being suppressed because of possibly some of that trauma and the need to medicate it.
The tragedy of PTSD causing them to suppress and force these feelings down. My guest this week on Destination Unlimited is Marla Fries. She's the author of American Psychic, A Spiritual Journey from the Heartland to Hollywood, Heaven, and Beyond. And we'll be back with Marla after these words on the OMTimes radio network.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Looking for inspiration?
Want to be inspired?
Not sure where to go?
Find Mark and Kim every Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern on Inspired Living.
Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual.
Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
Knowing your breasts can save your life. Go to knowyourgirls.org for the facts you need on breast health. Brought to you by Susan G. Komen and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this evening is Marla Fries, and she's the author of American Psychic, A Spiritual Journey from the Heartland to Hollywood, Heaven, and Beyond. So how did the events in your early life lead to your career as a performer?
Well, I noticed my mother loved television more than anything. And I thought if I could get into that box across the room, into that television set, then maybe she wouldn't harm me. Maybe she would love me and adore me. So I started to make it my mission. And, of course, I was precocious as a child, but you're on stage and you're in kindergarten. I actually saw my mother's face finally lit with joy. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do this.
And how did the career unfold?
Well, I went to college. I went to Miami University of Ohio as an art student, actually, and my real joy was stage and theater and musicals. And I just I changed my major, and I started doing musicals in school, and I left college based on a couple of unique situations that I had where my psychic abilities were budding, and I just thought, I really do want to pursue an acting career, though. So I did, and I left, and I went to Milwaukee and was hired in an opera company.
And what happened after that?
Well, the opera company was really quite special, but there were a number of things that happened to me when I was in Milwaukee that were, well, let's just put it this way. I don't want to tease too much of the book, but I was living with the mobsters, and there was a lot of mayhem in my life. And I basically had to get away from them, and I moved to Chicago, where I continued to train as an actress. And I have to tell you, Victor, that I really think that acting saved my life, because it wasn't just the pretending that I did as a child to navigate my mother, but it really was the voice. It was the expression through my body. It was everything that I needed to experience to move it through me. And it was an incredible way to gain character. You know, when you're a young person and you don't have a lot of character, taking on the personalities of other people was really important. And it was a way for me to express part of the anger and the upset and the terror, and as you say, the PTSD.
And how did you make your way from Chicago to Hollywood?
Well, I went to Cleveland. I was hired at one of the best repertory countries in the repertory companies in the country, called the Cleveland Playhouse. And I was there for a couple of years. And when I came back to Chicago, I tried to reacquaint myself with work in town, but I really was itching for something more. And I wanted to make money. And a friend in Los Angeles said, I need a roommate, so I drove across the country and moved out here.
And what was your first experience like in Hollywood?
You know, I was so surprised. I was amazed that 59 degrees was considered cold out here. You know, I'd been living in Milwaukee, Cleveland, Chicago, Pennsylvania, where it was really cold. So I was really amused at the beauty of what California had to offer, and I loved it.
You know, my wife and I frequently travel out to friends and visit friends in California, and the energy of the Pacific, we're of course Atlantic coasters, the energy of the Pacific is so different. Do you find that also?
You know, I think it is. There's something about being here on the West Coast and near the deserts where we'll talk about energy and the frequency. It is very unique. And maybe it has to do with, you know, the silica of the sand out here, the mountains very close, the water, and maybe it's a lot of sunshine, Victor.
Now, during your time as an actress, how did the psychic awareness begin to manifest for you?
Oh, well, when I moved to Cleveland, I was on fire. It was one of those amazing experiences of having an idea and then it coming to fruition. And then I started seeing things and they would be manifesting. And there was one time when I was on stage doing, what was the name of that show? Oh, my goodness. I can't actually remember the name of the show. The dynamic was a little musical, and I was getting ready to do a big dance number, and my hands were sweating, and I was thinking, how am I going to do this? And I did the flip, and I was thinking about the next move, and it was 1940s Radio Hour. Sorry about that. I had sort of a senior moment there. The show was 1940s Radio Hour. But as soon as I got finished with that dance routine, I started to smell smoke. And I started to see in my mind flames and heat, and something was being destroyed, and I got very upset. I actually got off stage and called the superintendent of my building where I lived, and I asked him if there was anything that was happening, and he said no. So I thought, why in the world would I be having this overwhelming experience on stage? And a friend of mine said, hey, you want to come over and have a drink with me? So we went to his house, and we walked in the door, and he had left the stove on. And the butter was bubbling, and the handle on the pan had been singed off.
Wow!
So it was just possibly ready to move into something more damaging.
Now, you share a lot of these experiences in your wonderful book, American Psychic. Just give us one of the Hollywood experiences where the psychic energy started coming through.
Well, I was on set. Actually, this is part of the opening of the book. I was on set during a Captain Crunch cereal commercial, and I had just met the guy that was playing my husband, and we were sitting there talking, and he looked at me, and something shifted inside of me. I didn't see him anymore. In fact, I didn't see the lights or the camera or anything around. I saw a room, a blue room. It was like a bedroom, and then there was a crib. And I noticed that there was a baby in the crib, and I heard, "Please tell him. I know he reads the blue book every night to his son." And I went, "Oh my God, what the heck is happening here?" And I heard the director say, "Marla, are you okay?" And I shifted and I got back to my commercial acting moment. And I thought, "Oh my God, if this is about the man that I'm sitting with, how am I going to tell him about this?" Mm-hmm. And Mike leaned in and said, "Are you okay?" And he touched me. And as soon as he said that, I heard, "It's me, Fred, tell him it's me." And I said, "Mike, I'm so sorry. I just am having an experience right now, and I'm one of those people that have just started talking to the dead, and I thought I would ask you if you have a baby." And he said, "Yes, I do have a baby boy." And I said, "Well, I think I have your father here, and he's talking about the baby and how you read the blue book every night to him." And Mike said, "Yes, I read. I think it was Bluefish or something. It's a fish book." And he said, "Yeah, I read it every night to my son."
What was his reaction?
He started to tear up.
And how did that make you feel?
Victor, I don't go where I'm not invited, but that moment, that time, that place made me wonder, did Spirit put me in this situation, give me this job to make a communication to Mike? Because I don't remember the rest of the commercial.
Was this an opportunity to really start working with energy? That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, well, it had just started happening. This was the mid-'90s when this all started. And it was, it became so rewarding, Victor, that I didn't want to act anymore. I didn't need to pretend anymore.
And at what point did you actually leave the entertainment industry to pursue this work full-time?
Well, the last television show I did was in 2002. I had just done Everybody Loves Raymond, and it was the Drew Carey show. And I walked off set and ran into Jerry Cohen, who was the director of Married with Children. And I had done that show possibly, 11 years before. And Jerry said, "Nice work, Marla. Nice to see you." And I said, "Yeah, Jerry." And I just felt done. I just felt complete, like I didn't need to do this anymore.
And what did you do?
Well, I went home and had a hamburger, I think, but I don't know. I was hungry. It was really fun. But, I started to allow this work to come through me.
When you say allow it to come through, I really think it's important for the audience to understand what it's like when you have a major change like this. When you say allow it to come through you, what was that experience like?
Well, it was an ongoing experience. It didn't start like immediately. I mean, when I had my first sort of awakening about talking to dead people, that was shocking. I'd been sitting at a table, and a dead woman came and basically told me something about the man that I was talking to. And I listened to what she was telling me. I didn't really understand what was happening, but I followed her direction. And he was a con artist.
Mm-hmm. And what was
so? Well, I ended up going to law enforcement, and I started working for law enforcement, and law enforcement turned around and started helping me.
Okay. I think the point that I'm trying to get to is you're in a position where you have a regular income, a salary, or whatever it is that you're getting paid for. And for most of us who put in day jobs and not have the Hollywood experience, but have regular jobs, to give up that weekly or biweekly paycheck and go out into a venture because you have a calling is a major challenge. How did you accomplish that?
Well, I guess it was trust. It was trust. Yeah. I mean, I did miss the money, of course, but it was trust. I guess that's the best way to describe it, Victor, because when you are besought with being Godsmacked like this, you have to pay attention to the fact that this is what you're supposed to be doing. And I loved acting, and oh my goodness, I just had to surrender to it. So I did.
My guest this week on Destination Unlimited is Marla Fries. She's the author of American Psychic, A Spiritual Journey from the Heartland to Hollywood, Heaven, and Beyond. And the book actually was just published yesterday. Marla, please tell our listeners where they can find out more about you, the book, and your work.
Well, thank you, Victor. Well, I have AmericanPsychicBook.com, and that will also link you to MarlaFries.com, my other website. And right now I'm just talking to you, having a grand time, and enjoying this launch of the book.
Wonderful. And do you have events coming up? Are they posted on your website?
Well, actually, I do have a couple of events coming up. There's a book signing in Studio City at the bookstore, Barnes & Noble, on the 9th. And right now, I am planning on doing Coast to Coast on June 16th with Lisa Garr. And I think I'm doing Lisa Garr's show on the 27th and her Own Aware show. But I'm going to Chicago, and I'm doing the Wilmette Theater July 12th. With Conversations with Weigel. Jennifer Weigel has been bringing people in like me to do evenings at the Wilmette Theater, and it's pretty amazing. And that's the 12th. And on the 14th of July, I'm going out to the Paramount Theater. I'm very excited about this because there was a man that found me on a train, like a Schwab's drugstore story. He found me on the train as an actress and put me on stage in my first equity show at the Cleveland Playhouse, Jim Cordy. And he is now the artistic director of the Paramount Theater in Aurora. And we're doing a whole evening. And I can't wait. Jim and I are going to talk about intuition and how this all happened, and I'll work with the audience.
Wonderful. And we'll be back with more of Marla Fries and American Psychic after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Humanity Healing International is a small nonprofit with a big dream. Since 2007, HHI has been working tirelessly to bring help to communities with little or no hope. Our projects are not broad mandates, nor are they overnight solutions, but they bring the reassurance that no one is alone and that someone cares. To learn more, please visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
180/111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Marla Fries. She's the author of the just-published book, American Psychic, A Spiritual Journey from the Heartland to Heaven, Hollywood, and Beyond. Marla, before the break, we were talking about your breakaway from the world of entertainment into full-time pursuit of working with spirit. How do you experience and define the world of spirit?
Wow. Well, let's put it this way. I've been working with a physicist these last couple of years, Tom Campbell, and he's been bridging this materialism with, the non-physical matter reality with the physical matter reality and trying to explain actually parts of even the work that I do. And this larger consciousness system that we call God is so incredibly benevolent that it keeps showing up and giving us things that we need. And I think that that's one of the best ways to describe the work that I do, because my intention when I work is to give you information for your highest good. That could be any aspect of your life. That could be your relationship, your career, your health, your pets, your home, your businesses, and also deceased loved ones. I think it is remarkable that people from the other side or information from the other side comes in to help loved ones.
Absolutely. You know, one of the recurring themes in your book is that Spirit has a plan for us. Whether we understand or appreciate that plan, there's always a higher purpose, even at times when we can't see it ourselves. How did you come to that realization?
Oh, my goodness, Victor. A lot of trial and tribulation, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how does Spirit guide you? What's Spirit in your life like?
I get messages, and I've found that if I follow those messages, it's always for the higher purpose of those around me or myself. And if I don't follow them, I get a spiritual kick in the butt. That's what happens to me.
Good for you. Yes, we all do too. I just went through one of those. But we're stubborn. You know, we have fear. We're blind until we want to see.
Taking that leap is really important, isn't it?
Well, I didn't really have a choice. I did not have a choice. And it was one of those dynamics where I had to pay attention. My life was at stake, actually. So I really did have to pay attention. And that was the gift of fear. Because that kind of awareness, either your gut instinct, don't go down that alley, turn around, go home, don't be messing with that person. Yeah, those are the kinds of things we really, really, really do have to pay attention to.
In your book, American Psychic, you talk about the thems. Who are the thems?
Well, I had been married for a time, and when I got divorced, I remember being just so tired and out of my mind with having to go through the divorce process. And somebody was asking me, well, Marla, what about your guidance? And what about your angels? And what about Spirit? And I said, oh, thems? I was just tired, and I just said, oh, thems? And then I heard, Victor, well, Marla, if you're going to call us thems, you better know what it stands for. The Heavenly Eternal Messaging System.
Wonderful. I love that. That's so good.
I was like, okay. All right, here we go.
Now, you share candidly about your own divorce and the failure of relationships of your clients that they've experienced. Yet you say that all relationships, good and bad, have a reason for our higher selves. Please explain.
Well, let's put it this way. We wouldn't have all the experience that we have, Victor, if we hadn't, gone from one relationship to another, or if there were relationships that didn't fail. I mean, we don't learn from our successes. We learn from our failures.
Absolutely, yeah. How did your divorce affect you?
Well, divorce is devastating. And, loss is the kind of thing that, as I say, resets our life. Loss is the game changer. Whether it's loss of life, loss of health, loss of relationship, loss of home, loss of finances, it is the game changer that resets our life.
Absolutely. You've done tremendous work with investigators and police on cold cases. How did that get started for you?
Well, it started when I was working with the detectives during the time that I was being stalked. And I started talking to them about various things. And a friend of mine had heard that I was talking with law enforcement, and he brought me a crime scene photo. And I took that crime scene photo and sat down, and I said, I really don't know exactly what I'm going to do here, but I basically gave him details that was enough from that crime scene photo that they reopened that cold case.
Now, you describe walking into an actual crime scene and literally feeling and seeing the imprint of what happened. What was that like for you?
Well, oftentimes when, someone calls me in to take a look at a murder, a homicide, or in something that is a cold case, I will go to the site of the murder, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just that it lives in the imprint, but there is something about walking the same place, and it's almost like, going into another movie, another time frame. It's like stepping into another time, and sometimes I physically will feel some of the things that happened, but it literally is what they show on TV and movies, where you shift into a different time frame and you can see things. So that's what happens.
Now, do you viscerally feel the victim's pain and dying process at times?
Well, I'm really protected by that. I mean, I can feel certain things, but I'm disassociated from the physical body of the victim. But sometimes I will feel specific things that are actionable, that are necessary to corroborate that I'm on the right track. There's something that I mentioned in the book regarding a television show that I had done where I stepped on to the area where the car was, and my throat started getting tight, and I could feel the fingers of someone, wrapping around my throat. So I knew that the girl had died, probably from being strangled or even her neck being broken.
Now, you had mentioned the first crime scene work that you had done was from a photo, and then you also talk about actually visiting crime scenes. How's it different, the photo from being physically present?
Well, it's just there's a lot of different things about it. The photo, remember, I like to touch food, remember?
Yes.
I like to touch food and people. I don't know what it is about the photo that links one to go there, but sometimes that is really helpful, and other times it's helpful to go to where the scene actually happened, where the crime scene actually happened.
Do you still touch food, by the way?
I do.
Really? And you can tell
well,
whether that
you
food
haven't
is
had lunch with me. You haven't had lunch with me.
And you can tell whether that food is good or not for you. Is that basically what it is about?
Well, I don't. That's actually not my modus operandi. But maybe I just like to touch things.
Maybe you have your sense of taste in your fingertips. Is that possible?
Well, it maybe makes the experience better for me if I do touch the food.
They talk about synesthesia, where people combine two senses into one, or have people see color or feel color, or see motion or something like that. That's funny. Now,
well, it's funny. I was at dinner the other night with my girlfriends, and they said, I sat down and I looked around and I said, "Where's my silverware?" And they said, "You don't need it anyway." And I went, "Oh, come on. I'm not that bad." At least they didn't have string beans or mashed potatoes for dinner. That was good.
That's funny. And do you still touch people to determine whether or not you trust them to work with them?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. So a handshake with Marla Freeze is an interrogation, basically, right?
Oh, Victor, come on.
I'm just teasing you. Now, you talk about doing work with what's known as remote viewing, and that smacks of Cold War, black project, psychic espionage. But your experience has actually been very helpful to others. Please share.
Well, when I was going through this godsmacking, it was really, as I said before, the U.S. psychic spies, Lynn Buchanan, who helped me so much. Oh, my goodness. It made sense of everything. Because if you could sit down with these really brilliant women and men, and also a group of people that, didn't look very weird. They looked pretty straight up. They looked like, they had a job. They looked like they were normal. And we were all in a room learning how to do this controlled remote viewing. So the bottom line is of the idea of the way that the controlled remote viewing was set up, there is a protocol to that functioning, that psychic functioning that we all do and allow our subconscious to do things. It's extraordinary. And I encourage your listeners to look up Lynn Buchanan, Lori Williams, Paul Smith, and take a look at some of this remote viewing. It's pretty incredible.
I know that there's a couple of scientists who worked for the Stanford Research Institute many years ago, working with Ingo Swann, who I guess they call the father of remote viewing.
Exactly. Yes, that's right.
And what they're talking about is they're using quantum physics, the concept of bilocality or dual locality, that our consciousness can actually be in two places at once.
Well, I like to say that we can send our minds, and it's faster than the speed of light. So we can send our minds to various places, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's just like that. It's just a snap. And sometimes bilocation is at the site is oftentimes things that happen to me when I am in that experience. I like to train. I like to do this. I'm an expert in some areas, but there are things that I continue to learn all the time. And I go to the Monroe Institute. I train there. When I take a vacation, I don't go to Hawaii. I go to outside of Charlottesville, and I go to the Monroe Institute, where for 5 days I can be in brain entrainment and have altered states of consciousness without the use of drugs.
Let's talk more about Monroe when we come back from our break. My guest this week is Marla Fries. She's the author of American Psychic, A Spiritual Journey from the Heartland to Hollywood, Heaven, and Beyond. We'll be back with more of Marla after these words on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
Change and growth are part of natural life, and also part of your spiritual life. Everyone needs support and guidance, especially during life passages. Upgrade yourself with the OMTimes Experts program. With OMTimes Experts, you have access to the best intuitive coaches, spiritual teachers, counselors, astrologists, and oracles. Our team was carefully selected so you can trust. Find out more at experts.omtimes.com.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
You accidentally cut your daughter's bangs unevenly. Do you A, line things up a centimeter from her hairline?
Man, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man.
No. Sweatbands are so hot right now. Everyone's wearing them. Like that basketball player and that other basketball player.
B, get spiritual.
Mom, where did all the mirrors go?
A reflection could never capture our true selves.
Huh?
Beauty is within.
C, look on the bright side.
Less time blow drying, more time texting.
Or D, show empathy.
Mom, you really don't have
Ta-da! Twinsies!
I kinda love it. As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information, contact You Gotta Believe at YouGottaBelieve.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Back on Destination Unlimited, my guest this week is Marla Fries. She's the author of the brand new book, American Psychic, A Spiritual Journey from the Heartland to Hollywood, Heaven, and Beyond. And I just want to tell our listeners before we start this segment, this is an amazing book. You have to go out and get this book now. It just was published yesterday, and it's a read that will give you an insight into what working with spirit is all about. And Marla is true, and she's funny, and some critics have called it a rollicking adventure story. It really is. Go out and get the book, friends. Thank you. So, Marla, getting back to what we were talking about just before the break, you talked about going to the Monroe Institute. Explain to listeners what the Monroe Institute is about and what you do there.
Well, it's the largest educational center for the education of expanded states of awareness. And Bob Monroe, who was an engineer many, many years ago, he is deceased, but he was having experiences of popping out of his body when he was in his radio in his radio world. And he wanted to start, he wanted to explore some of that. So he brought in Dennis Metternich, who was an engineer, and Tom Campbell, the physicist. And this was back in the 70s. And they started working with binaural beats. And they developed HemiSync, the HemiSync program. And then Bob, of course, purchased this incredible, beautiful land up in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. And he started the Institute. And it's been going on all this time. It's really the most wonderful place to have these experiences where you are fed, housed, educated for a definite price that is affordable, actually. So some of these programs are teaching a lot of the things that Bob learned from going out there and communicating with other consciousnesses.
We talked before about this concept, and my show is based on the premise of the crossroads between spirituality and science, and I think we're getting closer and closer to that every day, aren't we?
Well, yes. Well, I literally did immerse myself in this because when this started happening to me, I really wanted to understand it because I had been so skeptical. And that meant being in experiences that would teach me things. I mean, that's kind of the problem with people that are poo-pooing this kind of work, or even the scientists who are materialism people. They basically are certain about there's, the whole idea about non-physical materiality is not something that they want to attach themselves to. And maybe it's because of, religious ideology, dogma, trusting in something that you can't see. But I always go back to this, Victor, how do you prove love?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What a wonderful thought. How do you prove love?
Yeah.
How do you prove love? Have you learned to separate the feelings you receive when working with clients from your own personal feelings?
Well, it's still a little tricky. When I start a day and I have clients, I'm alone, so I'm waking up and I have squirrels that visit me almost every day, in my apartment here in Los Angeles. But I have time to ruminate, think, feel, and all of a sudden something might come into my consciousness that I know isn't my memory, so I write it down. And I'm also given guidance about things from my own day that I also have to write down. But that sort of feeling that comes that isn't my memory. I'll give you an example. You remember what you did for breakfast this morning?
Yes.
Okay. What do you see in your head? What can you tell me about what you did?
I see the cup of coffee, and I see the Danish that I was eating with that cup of coffee. I remember I was actually watching CNN at the time, and seeing information about the upcoming summit in June, between the president and the leader of North Korea. I remember my wife coughing. Unfortunately, she has a little bit of bronchitis right now. These are the thoughts that are coming in right now.
Well, good. Well, imagine that those are somebody else's memories. They aren't yours. I experience something just like that, but they're not my memories. They're someone else's.
Okay.
And they're coming into my consciousness, and I'm like, why am I on a street in Aruba? This is interesting. Make a note. Aruba. That's curious. Okay, well, I have to have breakfast, so I'll put that off to the side. And then about half an hour before a client comes or someone that I'm talking to around the world, I'll make a note. It was interesting. I'm in different Facebook groups, and Jean Houston and Claire Zammit have developed this group called the Influencers Incubator. And Lynn McTaggart has these groups of the Power of 8, and I was invited into one of those. And one of the gentlemen that knows about my work in Perth, Australia, wanted to ask me a couple of questions. And I said, great, let's talk on Saturday. And we get on Skype, and and it was just audio. And I was basically telling him, look, I'll answer your questions. This isn't going to be a session because I don't have the time for this today, but, I got to talk to you about your wife's mother. I keep seeing this woman that's disoriented, and she's really having problems, and I just don't understand what's going on. And they said, no, she's fine. I said, well, I got to tell you, I'm feeling this. And if I'm feeling this at 6 o'clock in the morning in Los Angeles about someone in Perth, Australia, I think we need to pay attention to it. Well, they did find out that she had fallen the night before outside and had been outside for 5 hours, disoriented. So I know when I'm getting on the phone to talk with someone that stuff's going to start coming in, and I just have to pay attention to it, and I have to trust it.
Absolutely. Do you ever find the need to do an emotional or even a physical cleanse after connecting with spirit?
No, but I do with people. Absolutely. I'm thinking about jumping in the ocean right now. I got to, drive a couple miles to get to the ocean. To jump in the water to deal with what I just went through before I got on the phone with you. So.
What about a pre-cleanse? Do you do any kind of pre-cleanse before working with people or working with clients?
No, not a pre-cleanse. No. Sometimes, sometimes people are wonky, and I understand that, but that's one of the reasons I work a lot over the phone. I'm not necessarily in their presence. And I love working with people in person, but sometimes it does get a little sticky, and, I love a good bath. I love salt water, and I try and take care of myself the best I can. I hike a lot. I do yoga. I'm not in Taekwondo anymore. I actually had an accident in pole dancing, so I'm not even doing that anymore. So I hurt my knee.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm doing everything I possibly can to move energy out of my body that doesn't need to be there.
You do a lot of work with animals, both animals alive and in spirit. What's the difference between the way animals and humans present to you?
Well, now I can't claim that it's all animals. I feel a little, oh my goodness. Well, let's just say that I talk to dogs and I talk to horses. I can't hear cats the way that some people hear them. It's just a frequency. Even though I love them and I've owned them, or they've been with me, it's not the same frequency. This morning, I'll give you an example. I hike up here in the hills, and I ran into dogs, and I ran into one of my favorite dogs, and the dog ran to me, very excited to see me, because she knows I can talk. She can talk to me, and she can give me information that I can give to the owner. And I said, okay. She shows me the blue car in the driveway, and everybody's happy. She says, yes, my daughter just came home, and she drives a blue car. So it's simple, and it's clear, and there's another dog. Oh, she's been traumatized. Her dad has been away for a while, and I was just with her the other day, and she's so sad that he was gone for so long. So she's just sort of working that out now, and she's really happy that he's back. Simple things like that.
Please tell us about your collaboration with Whitley and his wonderful late wife, Anne.
Yes. Well, back in this is a trajectory. Back when I was at the Cleveland Playhouse, I took my Mondays, which is the Equity Day of Rest, and I sat in a little rowboat for a couple of weeks and read Whitley's Communion. So that was back in 1987. And I was so moved by this experience, and I thought, wow, maybe someday I will meet him and get to talk to him about this. So cut to 1997, I am with James Van Praagh. That's a long story. People have to read the book to find out how I got to work with him. But we were in Sedona, and we went out to see craft. We went out to have experiences, and there were incredible things that happened that night. And I saw a UFO, And it was not really something that I was interested in. Once again, Victor, I was the skeptic. I was like poo-pooing the whole thing, and I get out there, and lo and behold, my night vision Russian goggles showed me something that changed my life. So that was 97. So 2006, another 10-year span, 2007, I find out that the Streebers are going to be at the screening of the Phoenix Lights. Actually, a friend of mine was doing the screening of the Phoenix Lights at the Warner Brothers studio, and I heard the Streebers were going to be there, and I was really excited. So I went, and I said to my friend, "Where are the Streebers?" He said, "Marla, they're sitting right next to you." And we started a friendship, and it blossomed into Ann and Whitley inviting me to be their psychic medium expert on Dreamland.
Wonderful.
And that was in 2007, yeah.
Wonderful. What message would you like readers to take away from American Psychic?
I would like readers to be inspired to tell their own stories. I would like readers to understand that there's a spiritual connection to all of us, and it's through our lives, and it's a thread. And this intuition that we all have is our birthright, and we need to listen to it.
Absolutely. Marla Fries, her book is called American Psychic. Marla, please tell our listeners one more time where they can find out more about you, your work, and the book.
Well, the book website is AmericanPsychicBook.com, and there's a link to my website, marlafries.com, in there. And I'm just so thrilled that you invited me to be on your show.
Marla,
thank you so much, Victor.
And thank you so much for sharing with us. This has been a wonderful discussion, and I'm delighted to have read that book. And listeners, please go out and get that book. It's an amazing story, and it's something that we can all learn from. Marla, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Victor.
And
thank you, audience.
And thank you, Joel. That's right. Thank you for joining us on Destination Unlimited. I'm Victor the Voice Furman. Have a wonderful week.